New England Patriots are the next team that we're going to break down because they're a really interesting team, and honestly, it's going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch develop over the years as Bill Belichick gets older and Mac Jones takes the head of the New England Patriots and taking over Tom Brady's absence. So with that said, let's get into it. What's up, guys? I'm Tyler Coker, and I'm your host for today's episode of Today with Tyler. I hope you enjoy. All right, first, we'll go straight into their free agents, just like we did for the Buffalo Bills. To begin, their key free agents are Devin McCourty, their safety, Trent Brown, the right tackle, Donta Hightower, the linebacker who's been there since I started watching football, J.C. Jackson, the corner, and then some other ones that are kind of notable and kind of not. Matt Slater, the special teamer who just kind of is kind of fun to be there. He's been in the Pro Bowl for, I think, the most ever. So really like Matt Slater, but I mean, he's just a special teamer. James White, the receiving back. Brandon Bolden, another one of their running back depth pieces. Nick Folk, the kicker. And Jacoby Myers, the young wide receiver. So a decent amount of free agents are going to be leaving, but hopefully they can kind of bring a lot of them back, because without them, they have a lot of work to do. So let's look straight into their offense. Mac Jones isn't fantastic. He's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he gets the job done. His check down system worked for Tom Brady, and now they're just going to bring it back and reincarnate it through Mac Jones. I'm not terribly high on Mac Jones as a quarterback, but he certainly has talent, don't get me wrong. So it'll be interesting to see how they build around him and how they try to make him the best version of Mac Jones and kind of echo Tom Brady's successes. They certainly could use some wide receivers, though, because their wide receiver one this year was Nelson Aguilar, I guess. That's not the situation you want to be in with a rookie quarterback. It may not be their biggest need, but they certainly need to bring in some wide receivers, because working with Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Henry and Nelson Aguilar really isn't enough to kind of get the job done if you really want to be the playoff team that they really think they are. So definitely the Patriots had to bring in some wide receivers, but luckily they do have a very strong run game to back them up. They ran with nearly 125 yards per game last season, which is pretty good. It was 9th in the NFL. And they don't really have a big playmaker at running back, but Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, Brandon Bolden, and then James White is a really expected foursome of, they just get the job done. They're effective. They can catch passes. They can run the entire game like they did in that Buffalo Bills game where they only threw 3 times the entire time. They're really good. And while it would be nice to see a playmaker, it's not a necessity per se. It's not a must-have to get a big playmaking running back when you have 4 guys who can all do their part and have fresh bodies. Their tight end room is actually really good. When you look at Hunter Henry being your tight end 1, you're already in a good spot. But when your backup is Jonnu Smith, another red zone hotspot target, you're in a really good space. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are probably the best tight end duo in the entire NFL. And it's not too close, because very rarely do you see 2 really good tight ends instead of just 1. Their O-line was ranked 9 by PFF, which is extremely good. And the run blocking isn't as efficient as their pass blocking, but when you still can run the ball that effectively, it doesn't matter as much, So it's good that they can protect Mac Jones, but if they wanted to get a rock-solid left tackle, they'd be even better. And it's important they bring back Trent Brown at right tackle, because otherwise they're kind of tackle-less, for lack of a better term. Now, let's go on to their defense. Their secondary was crushing. They blanketed anyone who tried to throw on them. Their D-line was only ranked 13 in pass rush, but they still had the 4th fewest passing yards per game in the entire NFL. And that's mostly due to their corners and safeties being so good. J.C. Jackson emerged as a true cornerback 1, and it's going to be a shame to see him go if he does, because he's so important to the Patriots defense. Stephon Gilmore was lost, and they still didn't have any negative impact. That's a pretty good unit when you think about it. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, and it would probably be wise to attack the strong safety class this year as well, because there's a lot of really good strong safeties, and Kyle Duggar wasn't the best. He was probably one of their weakest spots, especially against the run. So Improving Kyle Duggar's performance and getting a new strong safety such as Jaquan Brisker or Lewis Sine would be really, really good. Or if they try to do in the second round, someone like Leon O'Neal from Texas A&M would also be really good. It kind of ends there for defensive highlights because aside from Matt Judon, their defensive line was really, really bad. Their edge and inside rushers can fairly easily be stopped, once again, putting Matt Judon aside. So they really need some help on the D-line. They need an edge rusher and certainly a DT, but their linebacker core is pretty solid. They have 3 great names in Judon, Donta Hightower, and Kyle Van Noy, but if they really want to compete, they need to improve their atrocious rushing defense, which starts from the D-line. So with that being said, I had their team needs listed as an edge rusher, DT, strong safety, wide receiver, and then left tackle. And assuming that Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar kind of leave, it might be a little bit more important to get a wide receiver than something like strong safety. And then, of course, if J.C. Jackson leaves, corner really jumps up on that list. So here's an ideal draft, assuming they can keep people like J.C. Jackson. In the first round, Germaine Johnson II out of Florida State is an edge rusher who improved his stock a lot during the Senior Bowl, and I would really like to see join because he really is just a good edge rusher, so to see him aside Matt Judon would be really good. I think the Patriots succeed a lot from that. In the second round, I could see them take someone like Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama. He's a defensive tackle who played right alongside Christian Barmore last year's second-round pick. So seeing Barmore and Mathis reunited to be another good Alabama defensive line in the NFL would be really impressive because when you look at it historically, like Washington, you get really good defensive lines when you combine these Alabama guys and put them all together. And then in the round 3, I could see them attacking someone like Justin Ross out of Clemson. Ross had a broken leg, which set him from being a first-round prospect to a third-round prospect. To have someone drop from the first to third only due to an injury, if he can come back to any sort of potential in the third round and get anywhere close to that first-round potential, I think it's going to be a really good pick for anyone who could get Justin Ross. So as we go through this NFL breakdown, you're going to see me trying to get people to pick him a lot in the third round. Because when you have somebody with first-round potential that you pick in the third, even if he only lives up to a third round, you get a third rounder. But if he lives up to his potential, you get a second or a first rounder for a third round price. I think that'd be really good, and the Patriots are pretty well set this year. So thank you for listening. I hope you kind of understand a little bit of what the Patriots are going to do this offseason and maybe a little bit of what they're going to do in the draft. Because when you're eyeing the draft for the New England Patriots, make sure you're looking for people who fit the Belichick system, because he's not your typical coach GM mix. He's not going to pick the best player available. He's going to pick whoever fits his system. So it's going to be important to keep an eye out on who really fits that Patriot system, who can find the most success in New England, and then we'll be able to dictate who's going where and what's going to happen. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.